think I wondered about
Call the
that.
meeting to order at 8:30. And we're gonna say the Pledge of Allegiance, and I was wondering if, Catherine, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so is there any public comment? I think we will go ahead and commence with swearing in our new board member, Julie Foster.
Like the car.
Oh, I'm gonna stand up and swear her in. Well, she's one of my former students. So.
We probably did the pledge together.
Yeah, you got it.
You don't have to repeat.
Okay.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. You do have to raise your right hand. You, Julie Forrester, do solemnly swear and affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take these obligations freely, without mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter.
I do.
Okay, then I have this little extra. You hereby attest as a member of the Board of the Retirement of Mendocino County Employees Retirement Association will carry out your duties and responsibilities with respect to MRSA in accordance with the highest fiduciary standards in compliance with the laws, regulations, and policies applicable to MRSA.
I do.
Thank you. Have you signed? Do you want to do that one?
It does either way.
I know, I said you can.
Look at this, you're doing a lot of.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome, welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
You're now legal.
I'm official.
There you go.
And responsible.
Uh-oh.
Yes. That's the thing that's always so hard to do. You're fully responsible as soon as that happens.
So the next item on the agenda is a discussion and possible action regarding appointments to the Audit and Budget Committee. However, I received a request that we go into closed session first. I was wondering, could I have a show of hands of who, is that okay with you, or would you like to, I'll leave it up to the board to decide if that works. The request is from Richard Shoemaker because he has to leave at 10 o'clock. So, is that okay with everyone, or?
Sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we'll go into closed session.
So we will move to agenda item, is that number 14? 14, and go into closed session? Yes.
Oh, you got it.
Julie Schneider's application for service-connected disability, no vote by trustee Charity. And on closed session item B, conference with legal counsel, direction was given to staff and counsel.
Okay. Okay, the next agenda item is discussion and possible action regarding appointments to Audit and Budget Committee. So Patrick Sullivan was on our Audit and Budget Committee, and unfortunately, he is now gone. But we have one position to fill, and want to open it up if anyone's interested or thinks they would like to be on the Audit and Budget Committee.
And who's
I'll
on it?
I'll volunteer.
You'll volunteer?
Who's on it right now?
It's
Tim?
Tim, Lee Parker, myself, and.
I think Julie would be an excellent member.
Thank you.
Okay,
I
well,
have to make my
I'll
contributions.
appoint him.
Thank you.
Okay.
As the new.
Yes, as a new member.
Well, you look, and it's
A lot of information, yeah, a lot.
Great. Okay, next is the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything to add or discussion about minutes? We have the December retirement report and preliminary monthly financial report. So it's okay to move on to do we have, is there anything to report on investment matters that,
So you have the monthly investment, trustees, you have the monthly
Whole bunch of red.
investment report. December was a red month.
It's Christmas.
That's what we expect. When the markets are turning down, we're gonna lose money. But I'll remind you that we are invested for the long run, and invest in a manner in accordance with achieving our target return objective. And when the markets are down, we're going to be down a lot. So this is not unexpected.
okay?
Callan will be here next month, and we're going to begin the work on reviewing, building an investment belief statement, and then we'll be reviewing investment policy, and then starting the asset liability study as well. So we have a lot of work in the investment space that will be coming at you soon. So,
Okay. And then discussion and possible action regarding Board of Retirement Charter.
thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, you have the charter with very minor changes proposed there, and I would recommend adoption as presented, unless there are any changes you see as necessary.
I so moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Okay. Do we need to vote on it, or is it?
Yes.
Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So everybody's in favor? Okay. Moving on, discussion and possible action regarding Executive Director Charter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, likewise, you have the proposed policy before you with no changes presented, but we are due to review this quarter, so I recommend adoption as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the next agenda item is discussion and possible action regarding travel policy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, what you have before you is a new policy for the association. I stole most of this language from Sonoma County Employees Retirement Association, Sarah, but did make some slight changes in this. We have the authority to adopt our own travel policy, and in recent months, there have been some issues with the county reviewing our travel by our trustees that has caused us some issues. So we put forth the idea of our own travel policy that will govern travel related to MSARA issues. One specific item that we've had an issue with has been trustees driving their own vehicles. The county has a policy by which employees are required to use the lesser cost option between a car rental and private vehicle being reimbursed for mileage. Trustees who are not employees aren't eligible for that, but there's been an issue with them getting reimbursed at private mileage rate. So we bring forth this policy to make it very clear the rules under which we are operating, and that we want to do the right thing by everyone here. And I know it's a brand new policy for you, so be happy to answer any questions.
I talked to you about this, James. I have an issue with not reimbursing for valet parking in certain situations. The Hyatt Regency Burlingame conference that I went to, Judy put in a request for me to be able to have valet parking there because I can't schlep bags anymore and walk a long distance. And the county turned it down, and fortunately, there was handicap parking that was close, so.
Nice.
But I very much appreciate if this covers that situation, that we'll have our own policy, and if I need valet parking, hopefully I get reimbursed, because it's really expensive. And it would be a yes or no for me as far as attending a conference if I was told I couldn't park close enough for me to be able to handle it.
So if I may, Madam Chair, on page 3 of the proposed policy, under item D, miscellaneous expenses, the last 2 sentences of the first paragraph,
Yeah.
only self-parking expenses necessary for claimant's vehicle will be paid. Valet parking will not be paid if there is an alternative. In this instance, if there's not a handicap accessible parking space available,
That's right.
then there is no alternative to valet parking. And I would clearly approve that. And the language does say actual blah, 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 may be paid or reimbursed if considered reasonable and necessary and approved by the executive director.
Yay, there we go.
So by my signing your travel claim, I determine that it's necessary and reasonable and that it is therefore approved. So that would be the case there.
So on this then, like the county, you have to fill out that little calculator, whatever that travel calculator thing. That's not gonna be the case
It's not required for us
for us?
if you approve this policy.
So,
If you want to use a county vehicle or a county rental, you can still do that.
Right.
It's not required. But if you don't want to go through that, you can use your personal vehicle and be reimbursed for mileage. Part of it, it drives me crazy that you're gonna take an hour of my time to go get a rental car to save $12.
right.
Penny wise, pound foolish. It's better for the organization. And I've encountered this before where if there's an airport shuttle available, you can't take a taxi cab. Well, I was stuck in an airport shuttle for an hour as we dropped off everyone else. And how much did that cost you? A lot more than the $15 you saved by me taking a shuttle versus a cab.
Yeah.
It's about reasonability and what's best for the organization. So you have that option as a county employee if you want to take a county car or use the county's rental car from here. You're still allowed to do that here. We will reimburse personal vehicle mileage if it's deemed appropriate, which I'm going to approve, because I think it's reasonable for us overall
To be able to use your.
to be able to use your own car. Yes.
Madam Chair, I want to move that we adopt the proposed travel policy.
I'd like to discuss it.
Well, there would be a little more.
We can second it,
There's
we
a
can still
second.
discuss, yeah, we can still discuss.
Okay.
Oh, okay, now, all right. So I'm just curious about the in-county meals, B, number 1, a scenario, if you could explain to me when that would happen. I can see number 2, as is the case today with snacks here, or when you may have a luncheon required for the board. But when would an in-county meal be something that you would provide for someone else or expect reimbursement for yourself?
Personally, the only way I would consider seeking reimbursement is if we were hosting some sort of work group for, and specifically set aside a lunch meeting for some reason. I'm probably never going to do it. I have had lunch meetings with lunch or coffee meetings with county employees or employees from other retirement systems. Never sought reimbursement for that, probably never would. But if we were having, I mean, trying to think of a scenario, if I were having some sort of work group where I was asking people to come into the county, and maybe it's counterparts from other retirement systems, and we're also meeting with county employees to talk about things or try to come up with ideas for something like that. If I just paid for lunch for everyone, I'd probably seek reimbursement for that, because, you know, being out $200 for lunch or something.
I think that's addressed in number 2 though, because it speaks to the retirement board, employee work group, and events. So
Okay,
it's
yeah.
the number 1 where I'm not, I guess, understanding the difference, where it's MSAR employees, service providers, or trustees in county.
I guess you could submit a reimbursement claim for any meal if you're talking about MSARA business. So if I'm meeting with a county employee to talk about MSARA business, I could seek reimbursement for that. I don't think I'm ever going to. If that's I did. It would not bother me at all if there was some level of discomfort if we just struck that entire section and renumbered accordingly. So that's on page 4, section B, paragraph 1. If the board wants to delete that entire section, that would not bother me at all. I don't think it impacts how we go about doing business in any way, shape, or form.
As the
That
maker
was-
of the motion, I'd be more than happy to do that if the second would do the same. And I thought, Kath,
I
Kathy?
did second it, but I am looking at 1 in regard to the difference between 2, 3, and 4 as being when our executive director or employee needs to take somebody to lunch to discuss something, and I'm not sure that it fits into anything else there. I mean, I'm not sure, I mean, even if James took one of the trustees out, and you had a $20 bill or whatever, it doesn't fit into 2, 3, and 4.
No, it does not.
So I think 1 needs to be there for that reason.
So I realize we can have a different policy than the county, and I'm at fault for not memorizing the county's policy, but since I've never asked for a reimbursement for out-of-county meals, I've also obviously never requested reimbursement for in-county meals. So does the county reimburse if someone requested it for an in-county meal? I've
No.
only
No.
No. I have a question about this. So by, curl law, this is completely acceptable. And have you discussed it with the auditor, because we're constantly struggling with these things in our department, and if you first, have you spoken with the auditing department, and have you gotten any pushback on?
So specific to this policy, have we talked about it with the auditor? No, we have not. I do know the auditor's office does look at our policies, and there was one instance recently, I'm not able to pull the specifics to mind currently, where there was a question about an item on a travel claim that the county policy would not have allowed, but they did look at our current trustee education policy, and it did allow that, so they approved it.
Okay.
And our current trustee education policy does allow for the existence of a travel policy. I have talked with the auditor about approval for different things, and the reference that is made is county travel policy, because that's the only guiding document other than our current trustee education policy. So this would be relative to us and what we do.
Right, and so
Only.
you don't anticipate any pushback?
There will certainly be some discussions, but I think it's clear that this board has the authority to govern itself, and the auditor in this case can't enforce a policy on us that we don't want to have applied to us.
Thank you.
I mean, tell me if there's.
I agree. I'm unaware of any reason why we couldn't do it.
Good. I'm just checking.
No,
Good question.
yeah.
Well, I understand, Dan's comment about not requesting reimbursement, even though it's in policy that you could on some things. But having been in a similar situation of a CEO reporting to a board, there were many times when I needed to meet with a trustee and they were working professionals, and the only time we could over lunch or whatever. And even if I didn't claim those, and I didn't many times, but even if I didn't claim those, I would encourage my vice presidents or somebody else if they did the same thing. So I think that policy needs to be there. Some of us might need those reimbursements, and you might need to have those meetings as well. And I always felt responsible for paying for any coffee or meal that I had for one of my trustees on the board. So I don't think we should eliminate one, so I'm not going to second.
No, that works for me, with that clarification. Because, we in fact are dealing with a whole different clientele when it comes to advisors on investments and decisions that are made that are governing a $500 million portfolio. And it is different from regular county policy and who we see. I'm just thinking of Jack Enos when he came to speak. And I picked up, because he comes almost every year, I picked up the cost of his meals on my teacher retirement. So I'm arguing against myself. I think we should leave one in there. And since my seconder did not pull her second, it's still on the table.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the travel policy?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Oh,
Abstain?
Abstain.
One abstention, one no. Judy, you got that?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Okay, let's see, moving on to the discussion and possible action regarding 2019 board work plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, you have two attachments in your information. The current work plan and the list of accomplishments. I'll just start with the work plan as it stands. And as a reminder, the items that are in red are identified in red because there's something that's changed for that specific item. And the smiley faces or non-smiley faces indicate the status. So we'll just go through this relatively quickly. Under our objective of 100% success rate delivery of benefits, we're still ongoing there. We've not missed payments yet. The historical benefit review project is still in progress. I am happy. You cannot understand how happy I am to report to you that we have now completed our business continuity plan. Birthing this thing was a massive undertaking. Took me far longer than I expected it to, but it is now done. And yes, that was the right word to use.
8-pounder?
We now have a written document. Every employee has a copy of this at their home. And we have one here in the office. We've got an executive summary, and we've anticipated all kinds of scenarios and situations, looking at how to categorize disaster events or work interruption events from the very, very minor all the way to the incredibly massive, and how we're going to set about continuing our operations if something happens.
Is that available on the web or anywhere
Nope.
we can look at it?
Absolutely not. It's a security issue.
But we can.
If a trustee's interested in looking at it, absolutely, I'm happy to send it to you.
Okay.
But it's, we don't make, no one puts their business continuity plan, virtually no one puts it out on the website for public consumption.
Would there be any reason to not send a copy to the county HR department, not for their approval, but so they've been given a copy if they had any concerns, like, hey, they had a copy?
I've shared it with the executive office.
Okay.
I can also send it to HR if you think that's appropriate.
Can you send it to the trustees? Or are you?
Yes, absolutely.
Send it to all the trustees?
Yes, yeah.
If you need some
I mean, just
insomnia
it'd be
reading.
interesting just to see how, yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that, and will. Any other questions on this bad boy? Oh, one other item of note on the business continuity plan. One of our fallback positions is PG Secure, which the board had talked about previously. Part of our contract with LRS for that service is that annually there is a mock event. We have a test of our business continuity plan with Pension Gold. We have that scheduled for February 20th.
You schedule the emergency.
We scheduled a mock event intentionally so that we have to implement PG Secure, because if it happened at certain times of the month, if we had a disruption at certain times of the month, we would not go to PG Secure because there's no critical functions that need to be done during certain times of the month. So we schedule it where we know we'll have critical functions and we'll have to cut over to PG Secure. So, risk assessment is in queue, and the initiation date is going to be delayed even further than what we have. We've not started it yet. I'm not sure we're going to start it for at least 6 months, to be brutally honest. Monitoring the strategic plan, that's what we're doing today. Policy review schedule, every quarter we're on top of that. You saw review policies today. Training, we're staying on top of that. You're getting your training next month. I do want to advise the board, we will be bringing you, we're required to provide you training every other year on sexual harassment prevention training. County employees, if you are supervisor or above, are required to get sexual harassment prevention training as well. And this year, for the first time, non-supervisor, every county employee is going to be required to get it. I have worked with HR, and our training will satisfy your county requirement. So you don't have to do our training and then the web training that the county will push on everyone.
And Sackers Conference also offers it.
Yes.
So we say our training will be in person?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Provided by our esteemed legal counsel.
Jeff? All right.
Yes.
And when is that gonna be?
Next month.
Okay, so I should not go to the February one that the county's.
Mine's very entertaining, so you're gonna like
I
mine.
I'm going to Jeff's, and I have to be here for Jeff's, so I can skip that.
Yes.
I like it.
And
Okay.
then at the conference, Ashley Dunning is going to be presenting the sexual harassment training.
What are you trying to say?
They can do it twice,
Jeff or Ashley?
or both.
And then we have ethics too.
I've actually been
but
doing
that's
it for
not-
Ethics
years.
is every other year as well.
Okay,
And we had that
'cause I-
in 2018. It's due again in 2020.
Okay, because I think I'm signed up to
Goes
do
by
that.
your certificates, so if you have a question, let me know.
Okay, I think I've signed up to do that this week at the college. I don't know
So
what that-
tomorrow, if I
Tomorrow.
can throw out a little plug
Mhm.
for myself and my daughter, my eldest daughter and I, and a third person are doing a training for the Sonoma County Bar Association tomorrow.
Oh, how fun.
Her topic is kind of equity, social justice, and implicit bias, and I'm doing the sexual harassment piece. but she doesn't know it yet, but I've got some fun things when I'm gonna introduce her.
Oh,
So she's currently working for the Health Services Department for the county, but she'll be starting Berkeley Law School in the fall, so.
Nice.
She should expect
Right.
it from you though, right?
Yeah, she should.
She knows now if she's watching.
She-
That's true.
All right, board evaluations, we did those in November, much to the chagrin of some trustees, but we did it.
yeah.
We looked really, really good in the evaluations. Organizational review, we're still working on that. We'll see how that goes. And the bylaws are in the queue, waiting on other projects to be complete. Feedback monitoring, our approval rate was 4.7 out of 5 in Q4. We've maintained that at about 4.75 or above out of 5. Our response rate's always really low. That's to be expected with surveys. Member handbook still in queue. Communication metrics, those have been delayed. They are past due. We're starting to think about those. We've just had other priorities that we've needed to tend to. I do want to talk about, we've had on here a joint meeting between the Board of Retirement and the Board of Supervisors. Nothing has been done on that. Does the board still want to pursue those? Or let that go?
Did we typically have it during the actuarial presentation?
We did last time. That's the only time I'm aware, that I know of, that we've had a joint meeting.
I don't need a meeting just to meet. Is there something that would be of value to both?
I don't know.
Didn't seem like there was a lot of eagerness to talk on either side, to me.
At the last joint
At
meeting?
the
At the
last
last
one,
one.
everybody just kind of sat there and looked at each other.
Of course, we had
Yeah, the
quite an
actuary.
audience too.
We had a huge audience, the actuaries were there. But the actuaries go to the board supervisor meetings too, so they can everybody can see them there,
Yes.
as well as here.
And we have that tentatively scheduled for a March, I believe it's on March 12th, the actuary's presentation to the supervisors.
Maybe
years-
something else flow out of that possibly?
Could. In years past, we've tried to do that in January, but there's always been an issue with the Board of Supervisors doesn't adopt their calendar until the first meeting in January, so we don't know when other meetings are going to be and coordinating schedules. So we just decided to move our actuary presentation back to February or March at this point. So
My thought is there are so many different boards that want to have a joint meeting with the board of supervisors, and it's hard to schedule more than even 2 of those in a year. So I think that's why it hasn't happened recently, because there's, whether it's the library advisory board or any number of other boards that want to meet with the board. So I think it's not probably terribly high priority.
Yay.
Okay, and we'll take his word for
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
with
Dan
that,
said no. No.
unless there's any objection, I'm going to remove that from the work plan.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, and if there's ever a need to do that,
Yeah.
ever again.
We'll
I mean,
respond.
Yeah, it just doesn't
Yeah.
feel like there's a need at this point, yeah.
Some boards want to meet with the board of supervisors twice a year.
Client presentations, we've shifted now because we've seen declining numbers. We're going to schedule 2 a year rather than 4. Community presentations ongoing. I know I'm supposed to go back to South Ukiah Rotary, and I'm working on Willits Rotary at this point. May have a date in March for Willits.
You want me to get the date? And
Yeah,
we don't.
yeah, that'd be fun.
We're not scheduling our meetings like we used to, so I'll
Okay.
get a hold of some people.
Okay. The one-pager's done. It's on our website, if you dying to read that. Communication item that's not on here, it's not really a board thing. I do have plans to reach out to our new supervisors and get in front of them and meet and have a discussion about us and our issues. Kind of advise them on where we are and possibly share the plan FAQ with them to help them as they, in the off chance they hear questions from constituents about the Retirement Association.
Well, we've got 2 new supervisors, so it's probably timely, right?
Yep, absolutely. On page 3, moving towards electronic only payments, that's in queue. We've done nothing with that yet. We just added it to the work plan after our last review when the board talked about that. Security audit is still in queue. Again, other higher priority items. We don't know what that's going to look like. We will be planning a strategic planning offsite again this year, probably in the third quarter is what we'll be looking at. And then finally, we wrapped up the investment consultant RFP. We'll be talking about investment beliefs next month, and then we've got a bunch of other investment projects, reviewing the investment policy statements, asset liability study, everything else underneath that. We also updated the accomplishments. We've now got 2.5 pages of accomplishments in the past 3 years, I guess, that we're happy with. I think it's just good to have a running list of everything that we've tackled and accomplished here. It's good to be able to demonstrate what we're doing to constituents and the public. So that's all I have, unless there are questions or anything else trustees want to discuss.
Any further discussion?
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess then we'll move on to item number 10, discussion and possible action regarding calling a special election to fill a vacancy in the 7th seat on the Board of Retirement.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Apologies.
Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, you have before you, we again have the unfortunate duty to call a special election. This time it is to potentially fill the 7th seat and the alternate 7th seat. Under our code section, since we have 2 different groups of safety members, we can have an alternate 7th member of the board. So you have the timeline and information regarding the proposed timeline and information regarding the special election and the memo that we will distribute to all eligible members. And we would recommend approval of both of those and that we proceed with a special election. Even though we don't really want to, we kind of have to.
You could commute.
You know anybody who's interested?
I do, fortunately, yes.
Good.
So,
I move that we approve the going forward with this timeline and this memo.
Second?
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Okay, and so the next, we would like to present you with a proclamation honoring your services to Mendocino County Employee Retirement Association. And would you like to do the honors?
I will absolutely be happy to read it. Proclamation of the Mendocino County Board of Retirement honoring Craig Walker for his service to the Mendocino County Employees Retirement Association. Whereas Craig has been a distinguished member of the Retirement Board representing safety members since December 1, 2010, and whereas Craig has served as a trusted and valuable trustee since his term began, and whereas Craig has helped the Retirement Board make the important decisions regarding operational and financial issues facing the Retirement Association, while remaining determined to be the best possible fiduciary, and whereas Craig has remained committed to the Retirement Board and its members while serving as a resident deputy in Anderson Valley, often attending Retirement Board meetings after working long hours on patrol, and whereas Craig's contributions include successful implementation of a pension automation system, imaging system, and member self-service website, his thoughtful participation in the strategic plan and board work plan, including policy development and adoption, making sizable contributions to the MSERA investment program as the fund grew from $340 million to over $500 million during his tenure, advancing the focus of the board on operating as a policy-focused board that functions as a high-performing team, And whereas Craig has demonstrated the highest principles of service, collegiality, and respect for MSERA, its board and members, now therefore be it resolved that the Mendocino County Board of Retirement recognizes and honors Craig Walker for his years of service to the MSERA membership and expresses its sincerest gratitude. The board wishes Craig continued success in all his future endeavors. Dated January 16, 2019, signed Catherine Cabnis, Board of Retirement Chair.
Yay.
Thank you very much.
You blush.
Thank you.
Can we change the date on this to 2010?
Yes.
The first one?
Yes.
So we've been on since 2010 instead of 2013?
Yes.
Oh, so where did that, oh well,
So if you're changing that, would you add an A in that first sentence?
right.
Yes.
Little typos.
And bold the other whereas.
Okay.
Okay, done. All right.
So when some Mendocino's loss is Contra Costa's gain.
Okay, thank you.
Is that where you're gonna be?
Moraga, city of Moraga.
Nice
And
area.
how close is that to your house?
About 9 miles.
Oh, no.
We'll get this done quick and ask you to sign it again.
You have a new house down in the Bay Area.
We have a house and have had for years in Berkeley. So,
Very nice.
just up the hill from Bolt.
Oh, yeah.
Fortunately, I have,
Any extra rooms?
for the right price, you
For a
bet.
law student?
Yeah. Fortunately, I've sounded out a few folks, potential replacements or candidates, and both expressed a level of interest. One will certainly be putting his name into the hat, and I think, I don't know, how many applicants will be, we'll see, but I think you'll find him, he's a sergeant with the sheriff's office, Quincy Cromer.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, Quincy would be great.
Yes.
He's very, and he's bright, I think, does he have, he's a writer, I mean, I think he's got a writing degree.
He's a very analytical
English, yeah.
fellow. So
Run it.
I think you'll find him a good.
Next topic.
So,
Will never be another
Don't
Craig.
thank you.
Okay,
Thank you again.
thank you.
Yeah.
And we're gonna miss you.
Yeah, it's bittersweet.
I didn't know you, God, that's a long time you've been on
Okay, well, moving on to number 12, discussion regarding administrative report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, you have the administrative report. I will highlight each item. Sackers, filing deadlines, as outlined in the attached memo,
Timelines.
timelines. Form 700s are due by April 1st. You're too late to be the first one to turn one in. I beat you all.
Second?
You, for the majority of you, you only have to file your Form 700 with Judy. And the document does not get sent to the state, but we hold it here. It is a public record if anyone wants to look at it. So if you have any questions, elected officials, you have different requirements, but we need to have an original signed here as well as wherever else you have to sign, to file those. Everyone else, including Stan and myself internally that file those, they just stay here. Legislative update, nothing yet. We'll be seeing those in the coming months as legislation starts moving or starts getting filed. I did look last week and there were a grand total of 2 bills on the Sackers legislative report because the deadline, the filing deadline hadn't even hit yet. So we'll be seeing those in the coming months as we move forward.
Our lobbyists, Trent Smith and Mike Robson, they do a presentation at every the Sackers board meeting. They're saying that like there are probably 150 new bills with the opening. And one of the bills that affects us that's been in the pipeline has been like increasing the stipend for attendees to the report, to the board meetings, and it was not passed, it was, but they're still talking about it, possibly revisiting that.
Okay. As things develop, we will keep you apprised of that. I did want to remind everyone, there's training opportunities coming up. The Calipers General Assembly is in early March. The Stacker Spring Meeting is in early May, right after Veterans Day.
Where is Calipers?
Calipers is in Monterey
Monterey.
in March. Stackers is in Squaw Valley, Tahoe. Not really Tahoe, but Squaw Valley, Olympic Village, in May. And there are other venues. If you have any questions, you want any help with training, let Judy know.
Oh, and there's the Berkeley.
Oh yes, the Sackers Berkeley investment training. Callan is later this month. I forget about things. So, Tim, were you going to bring up your issue in general board member discussion, or you want me to talk about it?
Which issue?
The accessing documents and information.
On this?
Yes.
What, I mean, it finally worked its way out
Yes.
after a couple hours at HR.
So for those of you that, I'll just talk about it under its administrative. For those of you that had no issues accessing your information today, you were lucky, fortunate. Not everyone was able to access all their information easily. As a result of that and some other issues and frustrations we've been encountering, we're thinking about the issue, thinking about developing a trustee portal. And there are services that can help us do that. So we're thinking about doing that as a solution. The issue seems to be we have intermittent closed session items, and we may not have a closed session for 4 months. And then when we do, we're needing you to access your information through a system you've not used in a while. And sometimes the electronic devices aren't playing nice or haven't been updated, or we don't know what all the issues are. If our thinking is if we have a portal, we'll put all of the information out to you every month through the portal that will be secure. And then we can have all of your information in one system, both the open session items and the closed session items. You'll only have one system to use rather than two. We'll still have all of our documents and information on our website, but you'll use one system every month, and that's how everything will come to you. So that would, I think, would be a simplification. We're exploring that option, and if you have any thoughts on that, feel free to let me know.
Cost?
We're exploring that. There are options as cheap as $200 a year. But before doing that, we want to make sure we understand exactly that we're getting everything we need. I mean, you can spend.
And then nobody else is.
Right, right, and the
Yes.
security piece.
Yeah, the security is a
Yeah, is everything.
huge component
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
We have to make sure we're getting the security that we need. If it's more than a de minimis charge, we'll be bringing it back and talking with the board about it, so.
Well, my issue was strictly with Filer,
Right.
which I've had since we started using this. And it took a couple hours at Information Services because they had to update things that I was wondering at the time if they shouldn't be updating all as we go along. Because when I tried to open some things, it said that the file is too big to be opened. And I had opened files before that were twice, 3 times that size. And I'm thinking, is there something, do we have to periodically take these over to Information Services for them to update? Because I don't know how to. In fact, one person that was there knew how to work Filer and one knew how to work iPads, and they both didn't know. So
The other-
one would say, yeah, well, we have to do this for Filer. Okay, this is how you do it in iPad, but I don't know how to do it. So it was more complicated than I could ever handle. And if we need to have updates, I think we should get on a list of, tell us bring it in and we'll update it for you.
Okay. Okay, we'll review that and look into it, bring some information back to you to what we need to do on a regular basis.
But convenience-wise, these things are great. I mean, not to have to worry about the paper and what you do with it when the meeting is over.
Oh, along that line, do we have to now go in and get rid of everything that's in Filer? Or will it automatically go
Anything that
away?
you've downloaded and saved to your device, you should go in and delete periodically, yes.
Do we still,
But
do you
not
have
filing.
Right?
cleaner? Not, you don't have to empty Filer, we'll take care of removing the files from there. Is there a cleaner app on your iPad or something to that effect? I thought there was.
We've never
Or was that the old device?
had them do that with the iPads. It's
Okay.
only if they chose to download the document
Okay.
and save it to the device.
Yeah.
Like when it asks you, do you want to open it and do you want to save it? If you've saved a file, then yeah, you may want to delete that.
I would recommend, so you're probably opening tabs and it's opening in either a PDF app or a Safari app or something. Close all of those and do a hard shutdown on the iPad would be a good way to clear all the memory and the cache so that there's nothing floating in your device that shouldn't be. I believe I've overextended my administrative report, so I'll conclude unless there are questions.
You made it.
Okay. Anyone have anything else to add to our general membership discussion? Okay. The next meeting will be held Wednesday, February 20th at 8:30 a.m. And I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
All
Yay.
second.
Okay.
Thank you all for
Thank
your
you.
patience and dedication.
That was hard, right?
Thank you.
You did a great colleague.
So I'll kind of review, think about it, and we'll
Okay.
chat about next
Good
steps.
job, Matt.
I,
Thank you.
from this perspective, I
Yeah.
won't have a